If you search Sherwood Dungeon on YouTube, you'll come across a bunch of videos talking about the game. People generally complain about the gameplay and graphics and point out that the game may have been alright for its time, but is now a joke. Those are somewhat true, but they completely miss the point. Sherwood Dungeon was never about the graphics or the weapons or the quests. The fun in the game was rather found in not what its developer Gene created, but what the community spawned on its own, the clan system, and the politics within it. So buckle up, kid. I'm going to tell you a story of loyalty and betrayal, a story of intrigue and war, a story of guest books getting spammed by hate mail and debates over MSN Messenger and Skype. Our story begins around 2005, when Sherwood was basically a 2-button game. You click the control key to attack, and control plus shift to block. That, along with the movement, was basically it. Your character level did not matter for combat, and neither did your equipment. But somehow, these two commands allowed for an insanely high skill cap and spawned an elite fighting scene with websites dedicated to finding the most skilled combatants in the game. These skilled players began forming clans, some which carried over from Sherwood Classic, which is a whole different can of worms that I won't get into. Some of the most important clans at this point included BW, Black Warriors, and DH, Dream Hunters. Remember these two, they're going to come up a lot. BW and DH had a huge war that lasted throughout 2006. Both of them had allies such as AOD and RDS, but after a while, BW won. DH bit the dustbin of history, except for one dude who really hated the clan and its founder, Warrior Chief. His name was T-Dog, and he would constantly post on BW's website and trash talk. Eventually, T-Dog changed his name to Exile and decided to create his own clan. I named it, it's literally 2 parentheses signs, I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, he founded what many now call the Horde, an alliance of clans hell-bent on destroying BW. Included that weird parentheses clan along with 2 others. One was Red Warriors. Does that sound weird? It's because it was a rebellion coming out of BW. A dude named Jimmy decided to change his name to Dark Lord and rebel against Black Warriors by becoming a Red Warrior. Isn't that the most amazing teenage thing you've ever heard? Well, he took half the clan and left BW almost dead. The second was KO, Knights of Old, created by a man named Big Steel. What sets KO apart is that it was the game's first elite clan. To join it, you had to beat Big Steel in combat. Given that he was one of the strongest players, that was far from easy, so KO was a small but formidable bunch. The combined forces of the Horde clobbered BW. They not only defeated them, but they occupied their base and sent them running to a different server. In fact, they followed them to that other server and beat them there as well. BW was even hiding in the dungeons at one point. At this point, the Horde was dominating the entire game across its 3 servers. Big Steel, Exile, and Dark Lord had basically won and made the game theirs. That was until a rumor spread. Big Steel and Exile were the same person. The dude literally created 2 different major clans under 2 different identities and managed to keep the charade going for months on end. This led to a major turnaround. RW got pretty pissed off and split off from the Horde and made an alliance with, you guessed it, BW. The 2 of them eventually beat the Horde and the game shifted in favor of BW again. Okay, at this point, before I get sidetracked, I want to point out that we're close to 2007 and a shit ton of other clans had been created by this point. Here's a quick list. Tag yourself in the comments if you're in any of those. So, from 2007 to 2009, the game begins to change a good deal. The combat system changes with the introduction of talismans and power moves, taking it from a 2-button combat system to a 5-button combat system, so marginally more complex. The game also settles into a general rhythm with its clans. On the one hand, there's the nice fluffy social clans that accept anyone and mostly focus on fostering a community. BW slowly becomes one of these, while other big names include DV, Dio Valente, KS, Keeper of Souls, and CTK, Chamber of Torture Kings. On the under end of the spectrum, we have clans created by elite fighters such as Exile. These mostly exist for a few months at a time and depend on the popularity of their leader. A big name who's capable of beating other people in combat is able to attract other top fighters. They then join, dominate the game for a while, but end up fighting each other because they all have huge egos. This happens a bunch of time in the 2007-2009 period with clans like Rifts, Eternal Warriors, Gods of War, and even a remake of Dream Hunters. Around 2009, we also get a lot more intrigue and the classic drama around BW. Since we last left them, they went through a resignation of their leader, a new chief called Integrity, who was deposed in a coup, a bunch more leaders because everyone kept turning 15 and leaving the game. And so in 2009, they were led by this dude named Memnon, and they were in pretty good shape. In large part because they attracted the game's #1 fighter, Cradle. This guy was out of this world. He had beaten Exile 7-0, and because he was so good, all the top players were joining BW. BW had become both a social and elite clan. What a time to be alive. Do you see where this is going? Cradle was just Exile, posing under a different name. He did all this so that he could then stage a rebellion. After he was found out, he remade KO and attacked BW again. This eventually fizzled out. BW stayed alive as a decent but not great clan, and a pattern of social and semi-elite clans continued to plague the system. And then this pattern continues to roughly 2010-2011. Around this point, Exile joins BW again, but this time under his own name. He starts influencing the clan from the inside and becomes best buddies with the chief, whose name was Storm. He, of course, rebels again. He takes the leader with him, creates a clan named KG, Knights of Genesis. This time basically manages to succeed. Storm leaves an emotional girl named Holly May as chief, and things just collapse. In 2011, BW declares itself dead. After 6 years of trying, Exile succeeds. Naturally, people moved on pretty quickly. The big social hub at this point was the aforementioned DV. They were created in 2007 by Wolfsbane and took the title of Big Social Clan that people like Exile want to kill. They survived KG, where BW hadn't, and in 2012 faced off against BC, Bellicose Cavalcade. They struggled for half of a year while BC trashed them, but managed to wait out just long enough for them to start killing each other. Like all clans like that. And then things looked okay until... So, in 2013, Exile remade KO. Again. But this time, he also remade DH. Also again. But this time, he put somebody else in charge. A dude named Earth, who was really likable and managed to hold things together. They allied with some other clan whose name everyone forgets and created the Empire. So he basically remade the Horde. I hope you see where this is going. The Empire stormed DV's base and was absolutely brutal. They demolished DV and took their base. In fact, it was so bad that DV leaders met and said, fuck it. If you can't beat them, join them. And they joined the Empire. They stayed inside it and slowly started rebuilding their own forces for weeks. Eventually, they split off and created the Republic. DV made alliances with a bunch of other clans and basically began a huge resistance movement. The Empire still got the better of the fighting, but it was nowhere near as bad as before. DV managed to hold out just long enough. Soon Earth had to stop playing the game, and another person named Demented was put in charge. And as it happens, he got into a fight with some other players, got pissed off, and basically killed off the clan. So DV survived, and it entered 2014 as the #1 clan. Then a bunch more things happened. BW got revived by some old members. One of these old members, named Caesar, becomes its chief. Caesar turns out to be a fraud, who was not actually an old member. Its actual old members conspired to keep this a secret and keep him in charge. BW makes an alliance with DV, which was fighting some clan named SOF. A rumor spreads that Exile was bringing back the Empire. BW pretended to make an alliance with the Empire, but backstabbed Exile at the last second. Started fighting him alongside SOF and DV. Things got wonky. Within a few months, SOF was dead, DV was dead, and the Empire was dead. And these motherfuckers were back from the dead and the #1 clan again. But this time, they had something new under their sleeve. Sherwood CNN. Sherwood CNN was basically a news site for Sherwood, created by a guy named Reptile. Reptile was a former top fighter who had played since Sherwood Classic, and he had been all over the place. The thing about his website was that it was biased. It reflected the beliefs of whoever wrote the news. And in 2014, that was basically BW, because Reptile had joined the clan, so they used this to their own advantage. By the end of the year, they had not only started blacklisting clans in a Mean Girls type of way, but they changed how clan wars were fought. You see, prior to this point, clans would just go at each other and fight, and at the end of it, they would just both claim victory. But CNN decided to implement a scoring system where you would count the number of kills during a raid. They would then report this number and use it to assign one side the win. The fun part was that they would sometimes send in referees and assign points arbitrarily. In short, CNN used its power for propaganda. And just as BW was at its peak and enjoying total hegemony, something strange occurred. They were raided by a clan named EQ, Equilibrium, and got demolished with a scoreline of 20-0. Literally everyone was shocked, since EQ had come out of nowhere, except they didn't. And before you groan, it's Exile? It's actually not. It was Reptile. He decided to create something called a Skype clan. He amassed a bunch of elite raiders, had them coordinate on Skype instead of a base, and attacked BW for the memes. His own clan, for the memes. But that was pretty much that. EQ died in like 2 days after the charade was exposed, but it set the stage for 2015. By this point, BW members decided to close down, but some of them really liked the idea of a Skype clan, so they created NR, New Rebels, and just coordinated on Skype. With no base, they would just raid people out of nowhere and demolish them. This became the norm in 2015 as the game's numbers continued to dwindle and eventually tend towards 0. And now we're here. 10 years later, Sherwood Dungeon is still online. If you log in, there's probably going to be less than 20 people playing. Perhaps none of them were a part of what made the game great. The drama, the conflicts, the betrayals. Chunks of it are still available from the game's wiki page and the numerous old websites on archive.org. I'll leave some of it there in the description below. And if there's any old players watching this, send me an email at sherwoodhistory2025@gmail.com. And I might just set up a reunion one day. Until then.